Welcome, welcome. It is episode 228. We are back again this evening. If you missed our show last night, we talked to Michael Gatt, who is the composer for the Kite Man Hell Yeah show, which was a pretty fun interview. But I'm sure this one is going to be just as great because we have Amanda Diebert returning to the show, and with her is Kat Skaggs. And first off, we're going to talk about a little bit about the Dynamite Powerpuff Girls Halloween Special and everything in between. But before we do that, I know Amanda, if you want to kind of give a shorter version of this, but kind of, I like to get a feeling for how you got into comics both as a reader and as a professional. If that's okay for us to start that way.
Of course, of course. I started as a little girl in Archie comics. So one of those, like, I'd go to the grocery store with my mom, and every time I'd get a new like Archie digest or Betty and Veronica digest from the grocery store, and that was sort of my gateway into comics. And then when I was in high school, actually, one of my best friends, her stepfather owned the local comic book store. So that was very helpful for getting to hang out there late at night after it closed, reading comics, which was great. And then actually, like, professionally getting into comics was because I started dating an illustrator named Kat Staggs. I was a TV writer, and I started doing this weekly web comic where I would tell really embarrassing stories about my life, and Kat would illustrate it. And that was kind of that was the very beginning. We did that for every week for 2 years when I was in my 20s. So that was kind of how I got started in the comics world.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up watching all like the Super Friends and Spider-Man, and I used to read Spider-Man and Daredevil, and then I really got into Power Records with the read-alongs. Those were some of my favorite things. And all the movies of Superman and Superman 2 and Superman 3, Batman and all that. And then I want to say I got back into comics in the in the 90s. I was working in a theme park airbrushing t-shirts, and the guy that worked there with me, we used to read them. And then I about, I don't know, 20 years ago, I fell into trading cards, doing Star Wars cards for Topps, and then did some more work with Lucasfilm, then eventually led me into comics, into DC Comics with Jim Lee.
Nice. So, as I mentioned, we are here to talk about the Powerpuff Girls Halloween Special that you guys have coming out. I would assume it's coming around in October because usually that's when Halloween is. But
yeah, definitely will be out before Halloween.
I don't know. Halloween could be right now until October, as far as I'm concerned.
So, kind of tell us about your background with the Powerpuff Girls in general before we get into talking about the book.
So Kat is a super fan. She has a Powerpuff tattoo that she's had since before we were dating. She's like an OG Powerpuff Girls fan. And I also really like it. And then our daughter is Powerpuff Girls obsessed. Like, her last birthday party was Powerpuff Girl themed. So it's a very, like, it's a family fave.
Yeah. Sure.
And do you guys have favorite characters or ones you kind of gravitate towards personality wise?
Well, I think I'm most like Blossom, and I think I wish I was like Buttercup. Is definitely how I feel about it.
I think I'm Buttercup with a Blossom rising.
Okay. So, tell us a little bit about the Halloween special, and what readers can expect from the book.
So what's really fun about it is I decided to do something like kind of meta. So the premise is, it's called The Sparkling, and it's very, very The Shining influence, but there's a lot of other horror classic influences in it. But I decided that the premise is that Buttercup is trying to write a horror comic throughout the comic. And then there's also things happening with her and her sisters in this hotel that they're staying in while she's trying to write this comic. But so you get within it, there are kind of 3 stories within the main story, because she keeps trying to write this horror comic and getting interrupted by the haunted hijinks that are happening. And each of those stories are in a slightly different art style, which is kind of fun for Kat. And isn't it? A lot of work for Kat, I guess I should say. And it's also a way, like, we get a lot of the villains gallery in there, a lot of horror Easter eggs from different classic horror films show up, different homages and stuff. So there's a lot packed into it. It's really fun.
So kind of tell us about the different styles of art that you are doing in this book.
I will say most of it is straight up Powerpuff Girls, but there's a series of pages that are all black and white. There's some pages that are very real, so it's a little freaky.
Think Mojo Jojo, but if it happened in real life, and
Yes.
how disturbing that would be.
Yeah. It's more actually, the girls are more disturbing in real life.
They
3D.
don't have
No fingers.
So tell us a little bit about your process of working together, writing and art wise.
Well, this one was really fun in particular because it's a property that our daughter loves too. She's been very involved, like a junior editor for us. So I wrote the story, and then our 9-year-old gave me the stamp of approval and pointed out some typos, and then it goes to Kat.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, our daughter managed to catch. There was a point. She was looking over Kat's shoulder, and she was like, "Wait, this panel's supposed to have this in it, isn't it?" And then Kat was like, "Oh my God, yes, it does." Because she's so.
I was doing those out of order for previews.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And she caught it.
She's so invested in the story that she's catching our mistakes. It's hilarious. So that helps, having our own little in-house editor as well as us working together, because we've worked together on things before. We have a pretty good. It's just really easy. I write something, she knows kind of what I mean. She does something, I know and trust that it's going to be amazing. But we also do have that awesome thing where I can read something and say, "Hey, does this work? Does this make sense? Do you know what I'm saying with this?"
Yeah, and I can also say, "Does this read like you want it to read? Is this playing on the page? Is it working?" And it's very nice. It's very convenient.
Yeah, it makes it really easy when all you have to do is walk into the other room and go, like, "Does this make sense?"
Yeah.
Dare I ask what happens if you guys disagree on something?
I don't think
we have.
It's not that we never disagree as a couple, but in work, as coworkers, I don't think we've ever had, and we've worked on a lot of projects together at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've ever had like a major, like, "What are you doing? Why did you draw it that way?" kind of a thing. Mostly because I think we're so collaborative in the whole process that if something isn't clear to one of us, like, it's going to have come up in a conversation. Like, what do you mean by that? But no, our working, like, of all the things that we do together, I think working is probably the smoothest. It's way easier to make a comic together than to parent together. There's my life and relationship advice to everyone.
I think we have our pull quote for tonight.
Cool.
So, Amanda, I know you wrote you've also written Darkwing Duck, which is also another cartoon. How was Powerpuff Girls the same? How was it different? And did you approach it from a different way or anything like that?
Well, I mean, it's, the vibes of the shows and the books are pretty different. But, with anything that I'm approaching that's already like an existing IP, my approach is always that I want to like honor the world that it's already in and the characters that people know and love. So I always want to make sure that I have the voice of that property and that I'm doing something that feels very much in the world. It's not like me trying to like make my mark and make something very different from what already exists that people like. It's me wanting to tell a good story within that world. So, for me, it's always about approaching it and making sure that I feel like I'm really like strong in the voice. So for both of them, it was going back and watching some cartoons to get in the headspace first, which,
really hard.
is fun. It's a fun way to like get in there and get the job done. But yeah, otherwise they're kind of different vibes. I mean, Darkwing is more like a parody of, the Shadow and Batman and that kind of thing, which is like slightly different, but they're both really fun to do.
So yeah, you mentioned that you guys went back and watched episodes. Do you guys have a favorite episode that kind of sticks out for you, either of you?
For Powerpuff Girls, I think my favorite, it's hard because I have several favorites, because I think I like the Boogeyman episode the best, but there's a lot of Powerpuff Girls that I like for a lot of different reasons. I think they have some of the most fun villains of any property, and so it's always just a delight to see what's going to happen in all of them. And that one's really hard for me to pick a favorite, actually.
I really enjoy, and I can't remember the character's name, but I really enjoy the one where the woman came in disguise and like manipulated the professor, and the girls like saw through it immediately and were trying to tell him she's not real. That one was one of my favorite episodes. It was such a great villain. And pretty much anything with Mojo in it, I'll watch that one.
For me, I always go back to the Beatles one because it works on so many different levels. I mean, it's it's a cartoon for the kids, but it also has those other beats that work for that only adults would kind of get. And is that something that you tried to include in the comic, or just kind of keeping it kind of kid friendly? I know you said that you incorporated based it off The Shining and stuff like that. So I see, that's probably an adult. Obviously I'm not going to show that.
Really?
I'm not going to show that to my 7-year-old. So
well, and it's exactly that. The story works as a story without, if you didn't get any of those Easter eggs, any of those references, the story is a fun story for kids. For those of us who are no longer,
Children.
8 years old, there are a lot of Easter eggs throughout it that are going to make us chuckle in a different way because we are familiar with these other, there's some references to Poltergeist, The Ring, Halloween, The Shining. Like I threw in a lot of references, and Cat. Oh yeah, a little bit of Saw. Cat threw in a lot of Easter eggs too, but they're subtle, and it won't. It won't take away from the experience that the kids won't get those references, but it's certainly going to add to it for those of us who do.
So, Kat, how long does it take you once you have the script to kind of do your side of the artwork for the book?
I think by the time I've got just a handful of pages left to color, so I think the whole thing will be about with Comic-Con in about 6 weeks, less. 5
I think
weeks?
about 6 weeks.
5 weeks,
Yeah,
like 5 or 6 weeks. Yeah, it's.
And do you work on paper, or do you work digitally, or what's your process?
I usually do covers half and half.
Mm-hmm.
Pages, especially for this one, the deadline was so tight that I ended up just doing the whole thing digitally.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, sometimes it's a mix. Sometimes I do half and half.
So are you doing any covers for the book?
Yes. Yes, I am. And possibly others, I've been told.
Okay. Well, when you're getting, you have the variant covered, you kind of have a free range of what you want to do for the cover, or do they give you kind of an idea and let you run with it, or how does
um,
how does that work?
it's a little bit of both. Sometimes, if I'm doing something for someone else's, book, usually I'll, throw 2 or 3 design ideas up, and the editor usually will pick one. But I for this one, I went with something that was related to the story inside.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was kind of said, that's great, go. So I just went in with one idea and said, this is what I'm doing. So.
So is this? I mean, the Powerpuff Girls are superheroes. Um, is there anything different than say working on other superheroes that you worked on, either written or drawn or?
I think they kind of embody a lot of all the great things about all the other superheroes, and you get to do it all in one
Mhm.
shot.
I mean, there's a little more. There's a playfulness to it, right? And there's a humor and a cuteness and a playfulness that I think makes it really fun, because you're getting like these hardcore fight scenes, but it's also done in like a cute, fun way. And that vibe is fun for me, and not one that I always get to play in. Sometimes I do, but
I also like the mischievous, very mischievous. Too.
Yeah.
There's
so
an underlying layer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So since it is a Halloween special, what was your favorite Halloween costume growing up?
You'll have to answer this one. I was raised in a super religious family, and I wasn't allowed to celebrate Halloween. So my real experiences with Halloween have been with our daughter, and her getting to dress up and getting to dress up in like family costumes with her. But yeah, I didn't really get to growing up.
I mostly had those, drugstore plastic bodysuits with that's pretty much what I had. I remember I had a Batman one year. I did a Wonder Woman one year. I can't remember what any of the other ones were. But then again, like dressing up with Viv has just reinvigorated Halloween's magic. It's just made it so fun.
And we do like a couple years. One of my favorites that we've done with our kid is she has a friend who has 2 dads, and our 2 families all together one year did Scooby-Doo, but like all the characters between the 6 of us.
Yeah, that was a blast.
And that was great. We had a really good time with that one. And we also, all 6 of us did Nightmare Before Christmas one year. And that was really fun because, like it's pretty epic when you get a big group costume together and everybody goes hard. Those have been really fun for me.
I agree.
I know about Nightmare Before Christmas because once it gets around that time, it's constantly playing here, over here. So, Amanda, who are your writing inspirations, and Kat, who are your artistic inspirations?
I have so many, and one of the things that I used to have more like stock answers of like the writers that I grew up enjoying, and then I realized that I'm still constantly getting inspired all the time, and it's kind of exciting as I'm reading new things and seeing what changes, what grows, and I find that I get inspired with comics, but also with books and also with TV shows that I'm watching or movies that I'm watching or music. And I've realized that I draw from a lot more than maybe, I mean, I think we all do, right? Artistically, we draw from everything. And then I've realized that my influences are even farther ranging than I even realized.
Yeah.
But I think for me, one that is always been a go-to for me is Gail Simone. And the first like real job I ever got in comics was getting to write a Wonder Woman story, which Kat illustrated for DC Comics. And, you know, it was already pretty scary because it was like my first professional gig. And they're like, do you want to write a Wonder Woman story? And I was like, oh, the most iconic female character of all time. That's not intimidating or terrifying or anything. This is fine. I won't breathe into a paper bag. And so I said yes, and I did it, and I was scared. And then I found out it was Sensation Comics featuring Wonder Woman. And then I found out that our story was going in issue #1 with Gail's story. So it was like just 2 stories in that issue. And I was like, oh, this is way too much. Like, it's like this writer that I really admire. It's Wonder Woman. It's my first time. And so that was like getting thrown into the deep end. My first professional job, which luckily I didn't sink, and I've continued to swim all these years later. But when I get asked that question, I often think of that story because it was like a pair up that happened so immediately. And I was scared.
I can imagine.
No pressure. I'm like Amanda. I could sit here and name 1,000 names. It's constant. Inspiration is constant. I mean, there's a lot of it. Nowadays, there's a lot of it that I see online, and just some random would come up in my Twitter feed or something. But when I was a kid, it was Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, and then like Neil Adams, and it was like, and even Norman Rockwell, Alex Toth, Bernie Wrightson, a lot of Bernie Wrightson. I can't tell you how many times I read Cycle of the Werewolf. And then heavy metal and all that stuff. Frazetta, I mean, like I said, I could just sit here and rattle off 100 names. More modern and more recent, like Adam Hughes, Sean Phillips. Absolutely love Sean Phillips. Yeah, I could just rattle off 1,000 names.
Sure. So how have each of you, grown? I mean, I think Amanda kind of talked about it, kind of made me think of the question when she was talking about being thrown into the deep end writing Wonder Woman. How have you guys each grown as a creator, from your first project to this one?
Oh, man.
I mean, I think it's constant, or at least I hope. I if I ever feel like it's not challenging, or I'm not growing, or I'm not improving, then it's probably time to hang it up. I feel like I'm constantly trying to push to be a better writer, to be a better storyteller, to go deeper, to do things that are more interesting and challenging. And I do think, I think burnout is a real thing, but I think mostly it is a muscle, and the more you do it and the more you work on it, the better and stronger that you get. I mean, I hope anyway that I'm a better storyteller now than I was 10 years ago. And I think I am. And I know that I fall in love with like whatever the new project I'm working on becomes like my new passion. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Have the between Darkwing and Powerpuff, those are styles of art that I rarely ever did before. I'm very much more of a realistic type of artist, but so it's been a real challenge, but it's also been really enlightening and encouraging, and hoping I'm doing them justice. I try never to get complacent in my skill set. I always want to learn something new, because it will make everything else better too, hopefully.
So, and going back to the book, I know you mentioned that you kind of have different horror movies. What are your, say, top 3 horror movies if you're a horror movie fan?
Poltergeist, Halloween, And then I get like jumbled at number 3.
Really, not Jaws? You watch Jaws every year.
Yeah, I do. I love Jaws, but I watch Jaws in July.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, there's so many. God, there's so many. There's so many. I also really like Burnt Offerings with Oliver Reed and I can't think of her name now. Betty Davis is in it as well. It's one of my favorites.
Okay.
I mean, I love The Shining, and I love Halloween, and I love They Live, and I love The Fog, and Poltergeist is, I don't know, like now being a mom, like I think I love it even more than I loved it as a kid. Like it's nostalgically I love it, but then now it has like a new layer for me that so I think perfect. It's like it's way up there for me now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think if you got, as we wrap up here, if you want to give one more pitch for the book, and feel free to promote anything that you can talk about that you're working on, and where people can find you on social media.
Yeah, we've got I have I think 3 Halloween themed books coming out in the next whatever time between now and Halloween, 2 months. So there's obviously this Powerpuff Girls Halloween Special, which I'm super excited about. And then Kat and I together have John Carpenter's Tales for Halloween Night, Volume 10. Mm-hmm. We have a story in. And then I've also got Rocket and Groot Tales of Terror with Scholastic and Marvel coming out. So those are my spooky season things that are coming out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I've got the John Carpenter Halloween Nights, and then I also have a book of stories with Frank Thierry, also from Storm King. It's a collection of all the Halloween Nights stories that we've done, but there's also 2 new stories in there. And I believe that comes out in September as well, also from Storm King. I believe it's called Brooklyn Stories. And then Powerpuff Girls. That's pretty much my life right now.
And are you guys going to be at any conventions, or do you guys do the convention scene? Or?
New York is a possibility for me right now.
And I'm doing Burbank Book Festival that's coming up this weekend. And then that might be it for me until the end of the year. I mean, we just did Comic-Con, but I think I might be done until 2025.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, if you're in New York, I'll stop by and say hello because I'm planning on being there. So,
right. Fingers crossed, we all make it.
Yes. So, if you want to kind of give a quick pitch for the book, and then we'll get out of here.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, please check out the Powerpuff Girls Halloween Special. It has got tons of fun, spooky Easter eggs. It's a really fun story. Almost every Powerpuff Girl villain is in it at some point. And the girls themselves, lots of fun art style. Kat did an incredible job. It's a super cool book, and it is out sometime between now and Halloween, but I don't know exactly what date.
I think it's the 3rd week of October. Yeah, Amanda crushed this. So it's spectacular. Also, it's Powerpuff Girls and Halloween. I mean, it's kind of a given.
Yeah.
Take your money.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank the Dynamite for giving me the opportunity to chat with you, and you guys are more than welcome back anytime. Did you have anything you'd like to talk about? And again, for everybody else out there, check out the website and all that. And we'll be back next week. I believe we have Ron Mars, who will be talking about the 20th anniversary of Zero Hour, which makes me feel old.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Well, you guys have a great night, and thank you once again.
Thanks.
Thank you.